Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Godman podcast. So, we had a little thing go on, and this is an extension of the conversation we were having on the previous podcast with you guys. We are titling this Sex Controlling Lust. So, we didn't do an intro for this, which is why I'm going back and recording right now to do so. But this will be the continuation. Rodney drops out at some point during this. I can't remember if it was the beginning or towards the end, or towards the middle, actually, because I think it was for most of the podcast. I know this is a long one, but very, very good conversation we have. You know, myself and Miss Rennie Mocha. And so, again, like, comment, subscribe, everybody. Give it a nice share and enjoy the show. Yeah, so what was the segue, Christina?
Cause you were saying
Self-control.
Yes.
There you go. Pick up from there.
Yes. Right now.
Oh yeah, you can go ahead and pick up from there.
Oh, okay. So, as Mike was saying about the self-control aspect, as we are going to this topic of controlling lust. Yes, one of the works of the flesh, and one in which seems to be the quote-unquote big work of the flesh, if you would, one which causes a lot of issues. And so when we talk about self-control is one of the fruit of the spirit. So we read in Galatians, I believe that's 5? 5? I believe that's 5. Self-control is one of those fruit of the spirit.
Recall.
And and when we talk about controlling lust, that as we were talking about the why we should wait, that is something as humans, we have this sinful nature, and, as believers, we are supposed to every day be dying to the flesh, right? However, we're not perfect. That's not a justification, but some do fall. We do fall. Let's not say that. We do fall. Okay. And, we repent and whatnot. But when it comes to lust, we're talking about, in this context, we're talking about sexual lust, because you can lust after money, lust after, attention, or, whatever the case may be. But in this case of sexual lust, self-control is so important because it can really do some damage to you and to others in whom are involved with you. Right. So I'm going to speak from, what Mike previously said about he doesn't understand why why some women, they say that, when a guy, would you say when a guy like controls himself, something like that,
When he's sexually disciplined.
that it's a attractive thing? That's what you're saying?
Yeah, that's a turn on.
Okay. So as a woman, bless God, I agree.
Yes,
obviously.
bless God.
I do, and this is why. That type of self-control falls under the umbrella of discipline, right? To see that you're disciplined in doing something, and something that is very powerful. As we talked about, sex is a very powerful thing, right? It has a lot of different, kind of elements to it. God created it and whatnot. But for someone to be able to control their flesh, right? Because again, we fight the spirit wars against the flesh, and that fight is difficult, for some people more than others. And so when it comes to that self-control, to see somebody have that type of ability that they're working on, they're growing their discipline to, abstain, from indulging in their fleshly desires, that is an attractive thing. That is a thing in which is, it's really good to see, because not only in that aspect, if you just have discipline in general, discipline in how you spend your time, what you consume, what, gets your, where you go, or, again, your fleshly desires. Like, that is a good attribute to have. And not, obviously not just for guys, but for women too. But, and to answer, to give you context, Mike, about that from a woman's perspective, yes, it is. Because as we hear in society and culture, there's a lot of guys in whom, well, God forbid, he finds out he's interested in a girl and she says, oh, well, I got 5 bodies. I got 6. I got 7 and 8, 9 and 10. And he's just like, disqualified, harlot. Just all the names, everything but a child of God. But then when she says, well, how many did you have? And he's saying, oh, man, I got 25, but it ain't nothing.
Just in the low 30s.
Just low 30s. What? Like, oh, my goodness. And I believe it is a very big double standard. And you want to go into the lock key metaphor. And listen, okay?
But, I'm a man.
Right. It's different for me, But no. Under the context, especially as believers, I ain't trying to hear that. Because you are under the subjection of God and under the word. And what the word says is that you are supposed to be controlling yourself. You're supposed to be abstaining. You're supposed to be walking in the spirit, okay? And not indulging. So, yes, there are some people in whom, are baby Christians, baby believers, I would say, and whatnot. But some of them do have a past, and they did indulge in whatnot. But as a believer, you try your very best not to be indulging in some of those, in that their activity, But again, to answer your question, Mike, to see a man who has that type of discipline where he's upholding himself and he's like, you know what, I don't want to be out here spilling seed. Because again, hello, you talked about the, having 3-4 different baby mothers. That's not attractive. It's not at all. As the guy would say, well, I ain't, she got 3-4 kids and she got 2 baby daddies. Listen, each party is looking at that type of situation and saying, no, I'm not trying to get with that. That's not attractive. I don't want nothing to deal with that. There's a reason, there's reasons why, so that type of attribute that you see a man who's saying, you know what, no, I'm not going to be sleeping around dealing with a bunch of women and whatnot. No, I'm going to calm myself down until I find my queen. And that I get married and, what's the word? What's the word I'm looking for? You can, those desires will be in covenant. That's my favorite, in covenant.
Right. Well, to play opposites advocate for a second, one would argue, and I want to know what your response to this. I know what I would say. One would argue that, and I've heard this argument before, that women find men who have multiple baby mamas more attractive because they have the ability to get with more women, and women want men that other women want. And that's why women will go for a guy who has 3 baby mamas knowing she's about to be number 4, despite him having that.
You want me to respond?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh, we're just screwing the intro today.
Just because a guy has baby mothers and kids and whatnot, that I don't believe, in my opinion, I don't believe that is something in which it's like, oh my gosh, he's wanted. It don't take much to make a baby. Child, we've heard stories of people in whom, one night stands and they were drunk and, the lights were off and whatnot, because you just felt like you wanted to be in the mood and you done did something and woke up the next day and it's like, oh my gosh. Some people don't even know the name of the person they got with. So I don't really want to use that per se, because if the flesh burn enough, you gonna just want to, satisfy, right? So I don't think we should equate that per se to, oh my gosh, that's attractive. Oh my gosh, he's wanted and whatever case may be. No.
I would also say some people are just more prone to being irresponsible to getting pregnant when they're doing these things. And that's how you
Yes.
end up with the multiple baby daddy thing.
Yes. No. And then also look at the stories and people who are in those type of situations where they got two, three. Okay, 2, 3 baby daddies or 2, 3 baby mothers, whatever the case may be. Those situations are messy. I don't really hear a lot of success stories when they have such situations like that. It's kind of messy. It's kind of a lot of confusion and chaos, and that's not something in which I want to be a part of. That's not something in which I'm not gonna really look at a guy in whom got 2 baby mothers and be like, oh my gosh, oh wow, he's got it. No, not. But as I said earlier, the one in whom abstains and can keep himself, especially as we said in this culture, where it's just like get wit, get as many as you can, my man, get as many as you can. Dapping it up and you good with the boys and whatnot because you getting it. No, no, because that comes with obviously some consequences. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
yeah, that's real. And like, folks just be nasty, man. Sometimes I just don't know how to put it. I'm trying to come up with like some wholesome. Listen, it's just the end of the day. Some folks just be nasty. But yes, I do. Getting back to the original point of it, right? About the double standard of things. And yeah, teach your sons to control themselves as well. You that fruit of the spirit of self control manifests itself in so many ways. But if you tell me there's a guy who's, I can't say girl, well, I can say girl too. You show me a person who can't control themselves sexually, and I'll show you a person who's also undisciplined in other places of their life.
And yes, exactly. That's what I said. That discipline umbrella, that self-control,
Yeah.
that don't just go for that.
Because at the end of the day, that's your body. If you're not disciplined enough to say no to some of the urges you have, you're a slave to your body. And like, what do we talk about, man? Like, when you get saved, that slave, you became free. You became made free. You are no longer a slave to flesh. So why is it that some of us go running back to wanting to be in slavery? I think as far as controlling the lust that we have, let's talk about precautions or steps that you can take to controlling yourself. I want to touch on real quick because we brought it up in the last pod, right? Pornography.
Wow.
I think one of the biggest things to controlling your flesh is avoiding that. I think one of the biggest reasons that our generation has such a problem with sex and with controlling our urges and having to go and find someone to get off when you feel the desire to is because we are in an age of digital pornography where it's literally it's accessible to everybody.
Oh yeah. And I would even lessen it a little bit because obviously we jump to pornography, but abstaining from things in which is just gonna get you charged. So music and pictures. I would even say social media, who you're following, what little snippets that you see. Obviously some movies have some TV shows. Child, some of these shows have some scenes.
First couple seasons of Game of Thrones.
Oh my gosh,
Power has some in the beginning. Like
some scenes, huh? So and obviously again we jump to porn, but there are some things even on YouTube. Like we're seeing a lot of things as soft porn. Like it's creeping more and more to be explicit, like explicit. We just bearing all, pun intended. So I think we should start there, like the little things that creep. And then obviously the big thing that getting to pornography.
I'm glad you said that. So on the previous podcast that we talked about before, and Rodney, I don't remember which one this is. You can, I guess if you remember what it was, but we talked about Watching what you put in your spirit because it's what will manifest later.
Mm.
And one of the things we talked about was being careful about what you allowed into your ears and your eyes, especially the things that were sexually explicit. For example, like we talk about the golden age, like us old souls love to talk about the golden age of like the R&Bs and when love making music was love making music and when it wasn't so explicit necessarily. But guess what? I found that because I listened to that all the time, I had the most perverse dreams. I was always charged and ready to go. Like, it was like someone wound up that gear in my back, and I was sitting here clapping cymbals, like, "Let, come on!" Um, and when I received that conviction from the Holy Spirit and that information, that knowledge to stop listening to so much of that, especially before bed, because I would fall asleep listening to it. It changed the way everything happened for me. I wasn't so wound up anymore.
Mm.
Also, like you said, when it comes to TV shows, big anime. I love anime.
Anime.
One of anime's biggest downfalls is the Japanese are, and I don't want to, I shouldn't do this to a whole group, a nation of people. Their shows are perverted. A lot of anime, and I mean a lot of anime has what we call fan service,
Mm.
which might not have anything to do with the anime at all. It'd be great anime, great plot, and all this mess. And there's got to be some big boob bimbo with super cleavage and barely anything but a nipple covered up
Right.
in there, and like cheeks hanging out and all. Like it's got to be that in there somewhere, or a few of them, right? And I noticed that the more I watched, and the more of that I saw, the more I actually sought that out in anime. So where I started going to categories like etchy and watching, because I wanted to see that
Mm.
because it was getting me more charged, which was then causing me to be so wound up. I had to go and get some. I had to go get released somewhere, and I found that when you take those things out of it and be careful of what you allow into your eyes and your ears, it makes it a whole lot easier to control the lust of the flesh when it comes to sex. And when you think about it in previous generations, right? They didn't have that stuff on TV. That would have been like that would you think about canceling stuff. It would have been
Right.
it would have been an uproar if they would have played some of the animes in TVs and households or movie theaters. They talk about like my grandmother talks about this, and she told me that a lot of stuff that is in theaters today in her time would have caused an outrage in the public.
Mhm.
Anything that has any kind of sex in it, first off, would do it. And a lot of the stuff that has to do with killing, with how graphic it is, would also do it. And we wonder why we have issues with the murder and like lust problems today in society when we're literally programming kids by showing them these things on television from the time they're young, by allowing them to see these things and letting them be accessible to them.
That's true. That's very true.
Rodney's awful quiet.
Hey, I was just letting y'all talk. I was letting y'all talk. I was, I was just digesting some of what y'all was saying for real, to be honest. But
Right.
yeah. But okay. But anyways, yes, lust is definitely something that has to be controlled and definitely have to be vigilant. Because one thing I definitely noticed when it comes to lust is if it's not being controlled, it can spill over into other things. And one thing I learned about lust is very selfish, and like that's the difference between like love and lust. Love is selfless. Love is selfish. So we find
Come
ourselves
on,
doing these
words.
when we find these us doing these things, even me personally, like I said, I've definitely had a moment where lust has definitely taken over, and I made decisions where love was in the driver's seat of it, and I definitely let that take control of me, and I find myself making decisions that were not godly, not holy at all.
Mm-mm-mm.
Yeah, I will also add that uh there are people in whom have addictions to pornography and and deal with these issues. Um, and obviously, there's a root to it. There's a root why there's they have the addiction or they're watching the pornography or whatever the case may be. Um, I've heard stories of testimonies actually of men in whom fought porn addictions and whatnot. And most of them, when they relay their testimony, is because the root was that it was a self soothing mechanism. That because of some trauma that they went through, a lot of people who find themselves, I've heard like women who they're promiscuous or guys in whom they fall into the porn addiction and whatnot. So most stories I've heard is because of some trauma that they had when they were in childhood. So they were molested or sexually abused or they were raped or something like that, and that type of trauma is very damaging. And obviously that takes some counseling and whatnot to work through. But I believe, addictions have a root to them. And usually that is a self-soothing one because, again, if they went through some trauma or neglect as a child or abandonment or they didn't get the love in which they should have gotten from their mother being nurturing or, the teachings or the love from their father, absent father, a neglectful mother or maybe no mother, and they would have to be watched by their grandmother, something of that sort. And so those things that happen within their childhood, are escalated to when they're an adult because that has a foundation within them, and that's the root. So because you're trying to self-soothe and you never felt loved or cared for, you felt abandoned or something like that, that tends to be the root, and the branch that comes from that, what grows, is an addiction. So you're going to find something to help self-soothe, whether it's eating, you're eating to self-soothe, or you go into relationship after relationship just because you want to be with somebody, or you watch porn because it's a quick satisfaction and a dopamine hit, I heard somebody, a guy, when he was giving his testimony, he said when he was in his porn addiction, the people were always there that helped with the abandonment issues that he had, because every time he go click on the site, they were always there for him. And they were always there to provide for him that dopamine fix that he needed to self-soothe. So that's what got him hooked, to have that feeling, after, he, handled what he handled. And so some people, when they are dealing with lust, they gotta get to the root. Gotta get to the root of the matter. Why, when did it start? Why are they doing this? That takes self-work. That takes you, having to do what you need to do to get that healed, for deliverance, and to get that handled, because I think, as one of you said, that tends to spill over into the other areas of your life. That type of addiction, as we've seen people who have alcohol addiction and drugs and whatnot, we see the rest of their life just in shambles. So their relationships, romantic or platonic, family relationships, can't keep a job. One guy, I heard, he got fired from a job because they caught him watching porn on the job. That's how bad it was, because he just had to get it wherever he was, and they done caught him on camera, child. Get in the feel, and so, and again, that goes into the discipline aspect too. That's why, you abstain and try to, keep to yourself, Last thing I'll say, let you guys talk. The scripture that came to my mind was 1 Corinthians 6:18. I'm going to read it from the Amplified version, because Amplified version it's very wordy, but I like how it just expands it. It says, run away from sexual immorality in any form, whether thought or behavior, whether visual or written. Every other sin that a man commits is outside the body, but the one who is sexually immoral sins against his own body. So as we were talking about why, again, this goes into the last one, why it's important to wait, because you sin against your own body when you go into sexual immorality. And obviously the temple, this is God's temple, this is a vessel in which God uses, not necessarily the flesh per se, but, our spirit, you want to make sure that the spirit is clean. You're walking in the spirit and you're not fulfilling the lust of the flesh. That's another verse, so yeah, I'll let you guys talk.
Amen. And I'm glad that you brought up that scripture, because I believe we read that. You just quoted Ephesians, right?
First Corinthians, and
First Corinthians.
that walk in the spirit, I think was in.
Because I know in all right, so I know in Ephesians they also talk about like that the that the sinning that it's worse because it's sinning against the flesh. Like you're sinning against your own body with those perverse goodness, man, sexual immorality kind of deals. But which tells you like how big of an issue that's been like forever. But I love that because like it's so true. We do tend to not think about the fact that like you are sinning against your own flesh. Like at the end of the day, you're hurting yourself.
Right.
And especially when it comes to like pornography. Like this is how you know it's bad, right? When the world is telling the world in all their evil ways are telling you what the Bible is saying, you need to listen. There is something seriously wrong when all these psychologists, the liberal arts, so they're very liberal and most of them not God fearing, all of them are telling you stay away from porn.
Very destructive.
Have self-control over your sex, over your sexual desires. They're all telling you this for a reason. Like, there's a reason that God puts this stuff in the Bible and tells us these things and gives us these commands. Because at the end of the day, everything is for our own good. And if we sit here and we decide to let our flesh take over and we're going to just do what we want perverse-wise, you end up like Sodom and Gomorrah. That's an early on example in the Bible of what happens when you let your sexual desires overrun you. Two twin cities let their sexual desires overrun them to the point where it was homosexuality running rampant, all sorts of fornication, rape, all of that. And God said, this has gotten so bad, I got to just get rid of these cities and everybody in them. There's no chance at redeeming any of them. They're so far gone. But if you look, that's how it was. Like I talk about, and when Rodney rejoins us, he can attest to this. I talk about before some of the issues I had in the past because I come to the realization that before salvation, I was trapped. I was trapped within my own. I was trapped within my own desires. Like I was truly a slave to the flesh, right? And to the point where I have literally gone to orgies before, right? And I remember telling Rodney one time that I went to one and I just couldn't do it. It had gotten so bad with everything, I just could not do it. It was a moment where I was like, you can feel it in the atmosphere, by the way. Like people want to talk about like, oh, well, spirits and stuff aren't real. No, you can feel that in the atmosphere. What they want to call energy are spirits. When you walk into a place and you could feel the atmosphere is just full of something, like full of sex, full of lust, full of all this, man, y'all just created a stronghold. Y'all literally have just created a stronghold for this thing. And it can get so overwhelming when you don't have any discipline because you believe that you can do whatever you want and that, society tells you that all this is fine and nothing's wrong. And you can lose yourself. Like I found myself feeling lost is the best way I can say it. It was like a fog, a haze. I was lost in the haze of my own sexual perverseness. And Literally, the only thing that got me out was Jesus. But while in that haze, it's nothing but that around you, and you feel you get to a point where you feel like this is all you can do. I'm talking about really being. I'm talking about really being a slave to this. You feel like this is all you have, and this is all you can do. You get into a routine where you wake up every morning and you have to have this at this time of the day. Your body is waiting. Is because your body gets used to these things, and it comes like an alarm clock. Same as like your eating and sleeping habits, right? Your body knows typically when you eat, and so it gets hungry at that time just because it's programmed to. It can do the same thing with sex and lust. If you always take care of yourself when you wake up, your body's going to be expecting you to do that in the morning. If you always around 2 o'clock in the afternoon go and meet up with, you know, insert fake Brenda LaQuisha here, at that around that time, you're going to become aroused because your body's going to be expecting you to do that. And so what happens, you create a cycle. You create this loop where you're just running in the same circle of this same thing over and over again. And the more you run, it's like you're digging a hole at the same time. And the more you do it, the deeper you're going. And the harder it is to get out. Until you get to a point where you look around and you don't see anything anymore. You don't see light. All you see is the darkness. All you see is what you've been doing and what's around you. And so this is why it's so important for everyone to have self-control and discipline. Because what I'm talking about is an extreme, but guess what? I lived it. So it's possible. It's not something that you can't, it doesn't happen to people. I know a lot of people that are in this. And the reason they're in it is because this is what society teaches, especially for men. Society teaches us that, hey, man, you big dog. You're supposed to go catch as many bodies as you possibly can. Because it shows how good first of all, it shows how much game you got. And it shows how much of a man you are, how many women you can get with. We have to stop listening to what the world is saying and the standards of the world and start falling into alignment with what the standards of the word are. I'm done with my
rant. I was looking up statistics when it deals with pornography, and one of the ones that I saw, hold on, let me find it again. Here it is. Okay, so I was looking up statistics. Let's see. So it says 1 in 5 youth pastors and 1 in 7 senior pastors use porn on a regular basis and currently struggling. That's more than 50,000 U.S. church leaders. 43% of senior pastors and youth pastors say they have struggled with pornography in the past. And only 7% of pastors report their church has a ministry program for those who are struggling with it. 7%. Okay. Another one, when it comes to marriage, 68% of divorce cases involve one party meeting a new lover over the internet. 56% involved one party having, quote unquote, an obsessive interest in pornographic websites. 70% of wives of sex addicts could be diagnosed with PTSD. Prolonged exposure to pornography leads to diminished trust between intimate couples, belief that promiscuity is a natural state, lack of attraction to family and child raising, and a 2014 study found that compulsive pornography users had greater impairments of sexual arousal and erectile difficulties in intimate relationships, but not with sexually explicit materials. So let's dive in here, okay? So people who get into it, now mind you, there's a couple of reasons, but I guess one of the top reasons is you just want the excitement, just to see, whatever, right? Get that dopamine fix. But as you consume that more and more, right, as we said, it does start affecting other aspects of your life. And when we talk about it in the marriage relationship instance, like you can't even probably have a healthy, godly marriage because you're so clouded, as I said before. Like you can't even properly perform within covenant how it was supposed to be done because that's all that you've consumed so much in excess that it unclouded your brain and how you view it to where, as you said earlier, Mike, like that's what you think it should be, you know. And you know when a lot of people, as you said, the world even says don't do it, don't watch it, you know. And obviously they also said that, you know, a lot of the different, like the most popular things, as you said, was like hardcore stuff like aggression, violent acts, you know, and whatnot. And so then you start taking that type of stuff and then you want to go try it, you wind up in jail. Remember, this is not something that's real. That's the thing that really needs to hit. It's not real. It's acting. It is acting. Okay? The way in which she acting and the way in which she moving, child. Acting, and some of them on drugs. Some of them are high while they're performing. Some of them not even in their sober mind, you know. So, like, it's just like, if you can really think of that, like, it's not real. It's all acting. And that's what you're consuming, and that's what you hooked on as to now you're trying to make that your reality and your view and think, oh, that's how it should be. Well, how come she ain't doing it? Because she shouldn't be doing all of that, because that's not even real in the first place. So, you know, and there are people who are in counseling, who are in marriage counseling, who are having struggles, as you said, about the comparison, you know, and trying to deal with this. Now, mind you, let's also, okay, unpopular opinion, it's not always men. Women deal with porn addiction too, you know. So even though we hear more about men who have it, no, there are some women who are down bad as well, who have addiction as well, and whom, again, the comparison, and they're watching it and they're trying to figure out. And one of the reasons I've heard, because some women watch it because they know men watch it, and so they're trying to learn. They're trying to learn how to bend over and flip over and do cartwheels and do all these acrobatics and whatnot because they think that's what the guy wants. And unfortunately, that is what some guys want, but obviously it's skewed, you know. So now you got women out here hurting themselves, trying to do excessive, impossible things, and, you know, all to kind of get the attention or to kind of compare to, or try to be able to do that in which, you know, you think he's seen, you know. So it's very messed up, and that is why it should not be, you know. But again, we always we go to pornography, and that's like the big quote on big one. But even like on social media, oh my goodness, you just be scrolling and it's near soft porn. You know, you see somebody done posted a very risque photo. Now, mind you, social media, some sites do have their, you know, their guidelines and whatnot as to what you can post and whatnot. But child,
Man, please,
they be cutting real close, huh?
They selling sex on social media.
They
especially
are,
during the pandemic.
as close as they can. What? As close as they can. OnlyFans, huh? OnlyFans is not even just for the sexually explicit. There are some people on there who trying to have a little cooking show, who trying to teach you how to crochet, you know, and stuff like that. But that blew up in a sexually explicit way. And there are some women in whom I remember I saw this woman saying how, you know, she didn't want to do the 9 to 5 anymore because she was making money doing OnlyFans. Like you're using your body and doing all this type of stuff and exposing yourself over the internet. It doesn't go away. And you're just like, this is how I can make money. I ain't gotta be do nothing but that, please. And that's what it is. So it's like that didn't help at all, you know. And then I remember also hearing guys in whom, well, now the question is, oh, well, would you date a girl in whom had an OnlyFans, da-da-da, you know, so most guys are saying, heck no, I would not. What's wrong? You watch them, you watch them and these other videos and whatnot, and you're getting excited over that, but you wouldn't date a girl who does it? Why not? Because that comes with something. You don't like that because that comes with a negative connotation. Because let's go back. Self-control and discipline. Huh?
It's all
So
right
that
when they don't see that we doing it, but when
right,
everybody knows that you on that, yeah, it's not. That's when you don't
right.
want
It's
that
okay.
person.
It's okay for you to watch it and to indulge in it, but you wouldn't marry her, but you wouldn't get with her. Why is that? So yeah, like this child, it's crazy out here. And then I think even with music, my God, it's gotten more explicit. Now, mind you, back in the day, as you relayed earlier, the R&B from back in the day, a good portion of it was just loving. Loving on your person, being, caring and being romantic and whatnot. These days, child, every other song telling you how you can do what you can and do what you do and what it can be and what it can't be, and I can do this and I can fit what? No, no, no. So it's like it's pornography in the lyrics too. Like it's porn music, too. So it's like, yeah, yeah, it's everywhere. But as you said, it's important to guard your eyes and your ears, because obviously that stuff can get into you and start getting into your thought process and in your mind, and you start trying to curiosity, start trying to indulge in little by little, what they say, little leaven up the whole lump, and child. Some people got a bakery out here, so so yeah.
I'm glad. I'm glad you brought up that we always talk about the men, but women also deal with this as well.
Yeah.
So we talked about this. No, we didn't talk about this. So I've talked about this with a group of friends before, some of which being women, right? And we had a conversation one night, where we all had to gather at the house, and we talked about how the proliferation of porn with women has caused them to be unhappy in their own relationships and unsatisfied. And I had one of the girls ask, "Well, how is that? X and X and X, like y'all do it too?" And we're like, "Yeah." And the men technically aren't satisfied in their relationships with it as well. But he said with women, they get, you guys learn to do things with your body. The women will play with certain. I'm not speaking of you specifically, Christina, but they start to you use certain toys to help you out. Like I know I heard that they say there's something, a rose that's out apparently, and what we were talking about was you end up with a dude and he can never satisfy you because you've overstimulated yourself to where the only thing that can get you off now is that toy that you got.
Because your body done got used to it and
Right.
desensitized.
Desensitized to feeling, except for that hyper stimulation that comes with using an artificial tool, right? And so now your sex life with your husband, if you have one, right, it takes a negative turn because now he can never satisfy you. And what happens after that? Well, he can't satisfy you in the bed. You start to grow resentful because he can't do this right for me. And now your next thing you know, you're leading to cheating, or just to straight up to a divorce.
Yeah.
Why? Because you couldn't control your lust. And I know we're talking about the porn again, but I think this is such a big part of controlling your lust right now. This is such a major aspect of why we have an issue with lust right now and controlling ourselves. Besides the fact that this is just a hypersexualized society that we live in right now. And I really, really, I'm not gonna lie, I am really envious of Eastern culture. Because Western culture is hypersexualized and Eastern culture isn't. Like you go to man, I love African countries, man. They want the money from the US. They want nothing to do with our culture at all. They see the hypersexualization. They want nothing to do with it at all. And if you look, when you have families that come over here from Eastern cultures like Africans or Asians, Middle Easterns, they have the self-control, and typically they're not the ones that are super promiscuous. Now you got some kids that have parents that were not strict on them or whatever like they normally would be, and those kids might grow up to be like that, but typically they have the values and the self-control where they don't allow what's going on in this culture to affect them and bring them along that path.
Yeah.
And so I find myself being kind of envious of a lot of them, because I'm like, man, like, y'all culture is where it's at, like I wish that for myself, and I definitely want that for, like, because I think of things as far as having children, and that's what I want for my kids. I'm being real with you. I do not look forward to raising my kids in this culture. This has to change.
No, not at all.
This is about, like, this is going to make for a difficult parenting job, a very difficult parenting job, because you're going to be parenting your kids counter to what the rest of the nation is doing and telling you. You're going to be parenting your kids counter to what the government and the school system is trying to push on them. Oh, and speaking of schools, man, school is part of the problem with this. Was part of the problem with some of this sex stuff. They've gotten so loose with what they say in schools and teach, especially when it comes to like sexual education. Now, I don't know how about things are up there with y'all, Christina.
In the East Coast?
But down here in the South, where we're a little more conservative, a lot of that stuff doesn't rock. But I found that, first off, when I was in Michigan, they started indoctrinating us with sexual education when we were in like second grade.
Second? I remember, I think 6th grade.
No, it started with us in elementary school. I remember being in second grade, bringing that paper home to my mom, and her telling me, and her telling them opting out. I'll teach my kid that stuff when they're ready. Remember dudes talking about what sperm looks like and how it is and all that. Like afterwards, and I'm sitting and little kids, and now looking back, I'm like, yo, they was wilding.
Yep, that was me in 6th grade. Like from my school went from 4th to 8th grade, right? And when I was in 4th and 5th grade, everyone knew by the time you got to 6th grade, you talk about sex. So obviously all the kids are, giggling and whatnot, laughing and talking about it. But what came with that was when they talk about it, it was said from the older kids that you watch a movie, pretty much a documentary or something that teaches you about sex. So, the parts, the different parts, the male parts, the woman parts, and how a baby is formed, And I remember when my time came in 6th grade, I remember the day you were like, all right, we're going to watch the movie, and everyone was all laughing and all that stuff. And we had to bring a paper home to let the parent know, hey, we're going to be watching this. Just want to let you know what it's about. And if you want your child to watch it, cool. If not, cool, But I had to bring that paper home, But yeah, there's some, and that's what I remember from, I'm not that old, but that's what I remember from my childhood and when I started hearing it in school. But now, not to kind of go off topic, but there's other things that are being taught to young kids about, the LGBTQIA community and just the struggle for that, to be teaching, now there's other ways in which, you go about spreading love and, how that goes and whatnot. Now you got to teach her, well, Adam and Steve can't have a kid, but, they can always adopt and whatnot. Like, why are you teaching that to a kid? Teaching at all, but teaching to a kid, So, yeah, it's just, as I've seen, and I'm pretty sure, our parents have seen, like, this generation in time is just getting worse and worse, but it is nothing new because that's what the Bible said it would be. It just, the world will be getting wickeder and wickeder, growing deceitful and desperately wicked, the heart. So, yeah. Rodney, you have any comments on all of this?
Oh, is he back?
Oh, I didn't even see he was on. Okay.
Yeah, no, he's been gone for a minute.
Oh. But yeah, it's back to like the topic, like just controlling it is just it's one of those I think it's one of the easiest sins to fall into. Stealing, you contemplating a little bit, about if you want to go into the store and steal a candy bar. You looking at the cameras, you looking around you, you looking real suspect or whatever, but when it comes to lust, all you got to do is see a picture. All you got to do is click. All you got to do is scroll,
That's one of those that's one of those sins that you commit in your mind before anything. So
right.
You just got to see it with your eyes, and your mind already does it.
Right, and that gets into it. I saw another scripture. Let me see if I can find it. It was speaking about Job, and it said Job made covenant with his eyes because he said that he didn't want to lust after a woman. Hold on, let me see if I can find that exact.
Job's such a righteous man.
Job. Let me see. Oh, child, the first verse in Job 31. Yep, 31 and 1. Let me see.
That man set the bar high, though.
Yep. I'm gonna just read. Let me see which version. I'm gonna read. Well, yep. I mean, all the versions pretty much, but saying that I've made covenant with my eyes not to look with lust at a young woman. That's the first verse. And he was like, "Nah, I gotta make sure my eyes are right. Your eye offend thee, pluck it out. That's what the Bible says. Yeah."
But see, he understood though. That's because he had the understanding of, like, if you don't get your eyes under control first, your body's gonna follow. Because your body's gonna respond to what your eye sees.
Oh yes.
Like, you don't just randomly, sporadically. I mean, you do sometimes, but throughout the day, you're not just randomly, sporadically getting hot and heavy. Like, yeah, I gotta have this, I gotta have it. No, it's a response. It's a stimulus. So we call it stimulus. In psychology, we talk about that all the time about different stimuli. And like the things you see lust-wise is a stimuli. So you're looking at something, and it stimulated your body because your eye saw something that it wanted.
Right. And the other verse, I guess one of the quote unquote popular ones, I'm reading the Amplified version again. This is Matthew 5, verse 28. It says, I'm reading the Amplified version. But I say to you that everyone who so much as looks at a woman with lust for her has already committed adultery in his heart, with her in his heart. And my question is, okay, I as I read it, the question has popped in my mind. Like, it says that everyone who so as much looks at a woman with lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. How come he didn't flip it to say, well, if a woman looks on a man in lust, that she committed adultery in her heart for him? Like, why is it just towards, like, the man? Because I feel like that goes both ways, because good God Almighty, again, women lust too, and, we've seen some things in culture, women in whom, they doing things in which is sexual harassment.
Oh no!
Because my goodness, because my goodness,
harassed a lot at work,
and that's unfortunate. Because let's talk about it. There are some things in which some women be doing on social media for attention, for clout, whatever the case may be, or you just hear these stories, and if the tables were turned, it would be lock him up, throw him under the jail. Canceled. Done. Pervert. But when women do it, ain't nobody really batting an eye. You laughing it off. Women talking about some, grabbing up on a man and grabbing in his area and stuff like that. What? Because if the tables were turned, child, you be canceled. So, like, I look at that verse, I'm just like, how come it's not like, because it says everyone, I'm including man and female, man and woman. So why does it only say like him to her, not Okay, you get what I mean.
I
But yeah,
can't answer that specific. I can't answer because I won't know what was in Jesus' mind when he said that. But I can
I know.
speculate.
Yes, we're speculating.
I
Yes,
can
that's just
speculate that
yes. Hmm.
we are in an unprecedented time now
Mm.
where the woman sexual empowerment has put us in a time like no other, where women are now openly being promiscuous and doing these things, whereas before they were not. Especially if you look in biblical days, they
Hmm.
weren't doing stuff like that because they were the ones to get stoned first.
Yeah.
When it
Yeah.
came to those offenses, they were more harshly treated. So it was uncommon to find a woman who was thinking that way and that didn't have as much self control, whereas it was the men who had to be taught and work on self control so much.
Yeah.
Also, I would say this: men being the appointed head of the house by God,
Mm.
right? And all of these things cannot afford to fall into lust because you're in a point of leadership.
Yeah.
Whereas if the woman falls into a cycle or a point of lust, and she falls into lust that way, she can be led out of it. But if the husband falls prey to it, his wife can't lead him out of it because he's supposed to be the leader.
Hmm.
So
So
where he leads, his household goes.
okay. So what would you, in your opinion, for those in whom may be listening and are dealing with an addiction uh, to pornography, or they're struggling with, indulging in their flesh and whatnot, what would you tell to them? And also, what would you, I mean, obviously, we're not married, but just, as a perspective, amen.
Listen, I'm
Uh,
married. I'm just not married yet.
okay. Yeah. Okay. But to those in whom, as I read the statistics, the one who, the one party in who may be going through it, and the other one, like, what would you kind of tell them, or what would your thoughts be on, how? Okay, let me rephrase the question.
Uh-huh.
What would you do if, your wife was, had an addiction or whatever the case may be, um, and obviously you're married and whatnot. How would you go about that? Obviously you're being the party, dealing with that, and you're married. The two shall become one, and things are magnified. So what would you do?
So
And
if she has an addiction to pornography, right?
yeah, lust, yeah.
Lust or pornography, right? Okay,
Mhm.
so the first things first, right? Um, First things first, if I know about it, perfect, because that means that, well, hopefully that means she's talked to me about it. Or it can mean that I just found out because I called her or something, right?
Mhm.
First things first is we're going to go seek counseling because nothing can be healed or get better while people are in the dark about it, while they're trying to keep it secret.
Mhm.
Secrets tear things apart. Secrets tear relationships apart. They tear a lot of things apart. Being nothing good becomes being secretive. It says confess your sins one to another, right?
Mhm.
So, first things that is we get counseling. The next step is it depends on our relationship with them. Now, my relationship with my apostles is like this. I'm going and I'm talking with my apostles. We are going and talking with our apostles or pastors.
Mhm.
Um, to get spiritual counseling from them and advice on what to do. The next thing I would say for me personally is we got to start fasting more.
Mhm. And why is that, Brother Mike?
So, fasting requires you to deprive your flesh of what it wants in order for you to grow in spirit and pursue God.
Mhm.
So, for me, if we have a problem where one of us is addicted, our flesh is controlling us in an addiction, then we need to not So then for me, what I believe on this is we shouldn't be indulging the flesh, and to combat that is to deprive the flesh of what it wants and to fill that with the Spirit of God. Because depriving the flesh by itself, by you saying, I'm going to go cold turkey and we're going to come up with this plan, that's nice and all, but the flesh is still going to be desiring. It's going to have a hole left there that wants to be filled, that you were filling with whatever you was that you were addicted to. So let's say lust, right, and pornography, whatever. By filling that with the Spirit of God, by filling that with worship and by seeking out God and his presence, you eliminate, you start to eliminate that problem to where now your flesh isn't as much in control. And when you start getting that feeling, it's natural for you to run into the presence of God.
Right.
And so those are the two things I would recommend. Well, I'm sorry, that was three. The three things I would recommend. Not necessarily in that order. I think for me personally, we would start fasting immediately and then go seek counseling, because it might take you a while to get into a counselor's office. But the fasting, probably the first thing to do, and the phone calls would be the second thing, and then speaking to the apostles or pastors would be a third. And it also depends on how bad the situation is, right? Because, I've always, because I don't believe in divorce, right? So I've talked about the whole if my wife ever cheated on me kind of deal, right? And I've always said, Lord knows, God, you know me. You know your son.
Listen, you can't listen.
I
You
can't deal
control
with
her. You can't control. She's gonna
Lord,
do it. She's gonna do it.
Lord, don't make me a Hosea, Lord, because then your son might have to catch a charge. But
Oh God.
oh,
But what comes with that? I mean, as I just said, you cannot control the person, but you're hoping, praying, fasting that the person in whom you get with has that mindset to do their very utmost best to not want to do something like that, And I'm gonna tell a really quick story. My mother, when she met my dad, she had this thing where, and I still keep it to this day. She said when she met my dad and saw how he was growing in Christ and whatnot, that it helped her not to have to worry about certain things, right? She said, he got saved and, he's living for God and, being led by the Spirit and whatnot. And she said she didn't have to worry about it. It didn't even really cross her mind that he would be stepping out on her, or that he would cheat, or he would disrespect her, or anything like that, because she trusted that the God in whom he gave his life to, that he was convicted enough. Just again, we're judging the fruit, that is bare, and she said that just by watching his lifestyle and how seriously he took his walk with God, that she didn't have to worry about those type of things, because she knew that first and foremost he has a conviction, and that he answers to God first, to not do certain things, obviously. And then because of that, it benefited her, So, yes, no one wants to be a Hosea, but I think that's very important to, that's why it's, again, very important in whom you marry, because that's not it's not something to play with. Till death do part, covenant under God, that's nothing to play with. So again, I guess that also goes with the unequally yoked thing too, that you're getting with someone who has a similar mindset as you. You're not the same person, but and the things that are important, you have the same mindset. And one of those things is, well, when it comes to faithfulness, that I couldn't even imagine me doing something like that, because first and foremost, I answer to God, who is the head of my life. And because I live the way that I do, trying to please him and whatnot, and trying to live according to the word, that's deception. That's lying. That goes, it's a lot of things. And that would be me, sinning against God. And then because of that, also, that goes to hurting the person in whom I'm with, So I'm not even thinking I would do something like that, So I think that's important too. But again, praying, fasting, believing that you get with somebody in whom is same mindset, not to even, it wouldn't even cross their mind to want to do something like that.
Right. Like I said, we live in the world we live in, and everybody, there's so much of this infidelity and stuff going on.
Yeah.
And I'm
It's
one
almost
that,
glorified in a way.
yeah. And I mean, look how much you see it on television.
Right.
That should tell you something right
The
there.
the drama.
Look how many things you see, and it's scandalous. Look at all these Tyler Perry things. Like, not trying to call him out specifically, but it's in a lot of his stuff. But like it's there, and like I said, I don't believe in divorce, even though I know people will use that scripture, and I think Mark, I want to say.
Which one are you referring to?
I want to say in Mark 6 or 5, something like that, where he's talking about like, the where he basically says like he don't do divorce except if it's like for basically like infidelity or whatever, or sexual immorality, something like that. I personally, listen. God didn't design.
I see Matthew 19:9.
There we go. Okay, see, look, I'm off. It's in the gospel. Okay,
It
started with an M.
Yeah. Yes, it did.
But he didn't design marriage to be for divorce, and he even said it in there when he said that Moses said, the Pharisee said, Moses said, Moses gave us a letter of divorcement and we could write her off. And he said Moses basically, I'm paraphrasing, he said basically Moses did that because y'all was so hard headed and wouldn't leave him alone. Is what I got from it. Moses did that only for that reason. But God didn't make it for that. It says in the word that they become one flesh. You're not separated if you become one. You know what it takes to separate something that is one?
Ooh, I think I saw somebody, they did a demonstration like that, and they took 2 pieces of paper and put glue, Gorilla Glue, super glue, and glued them together, let it sit, and tried to peel it, and you clearly see each paper has a part of the other paper on it. Damaged. Okay.
They're destroyed at the point where you tear it apart. It's never going to be clean. It's not clean, and it's very damaging. It's not meant to be torn apart. That's why you say, well, God puts together, let no man, separate. So in that, I don't believe in marriage, divorce, even if something like that happens. My future wife, God forbid, she makes the biggest mistake of cheating on me. We not getting divorced. We not getting divorced. It's just plain up. There's going to be a lot of work that's got to get done now in this relationship because of the betrayal and the loss of trust. But we're not getting divorced. And I pray, and one of my prayers is that God, when it comes to that time when he sends that woman that, keeps getting prophesied to me, that she has the same mentality. That, there is no out. Like, I take my word very seriously. And I take my word to God even more seriously than I take it to anybody else. So if I vow to you and I include God in the vow, saying that until death do us part, then that's what it is. Because at the end of the day, what that is me coming in and making a contract with you and telling God, hey, I swear this before you, this is the contract I'm making with her. And also, when you look, and Paul says it in Ephesians 5, right? At the end of Ephesians 5, and he says, this is when he's telling husbands to love your wives, for Christ loved the church and gave his body for her, and this is the mystery that of marriage is a reflection of Christ in the church. Christ isn't getting divorced from the church. Christ isn't ripping himself away from the church. So if we're supposed to be reflecting that in our marriage, how can you divorce the person you're with? Are you going to divorce yourself from Christ?
Ooh.
Do you want Christ to divorce himself from you?
Oh no 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 no.
So like, it's like if it's said in the word that your marriage is supposed to mirror Christ in the church, then there is no separation. Once y'all come together, that's it. Whatever problems y'all got, man, y'all better learn to work with it. I had a pair of pastors before, and Rodney's met these pastors. They shared with us one time that there was like a 3-year gap in their marriage where they couldn't stand each other.
Oh.
Can you imagine that? 3 years living in a house, you can't stand your spouse, got kids together and everything. And they worked through it. They worked through it. Love each other madly. Love each other. But for 3 years, couldn't stand each other. Most people are trying to get a divorce if they can't stand each other for 3 weeks.
Right. Let alone.
Just throw it away. I don't like you anymore. We can't look at things like that. This is a permanent thing you're doing. This isn't a temporary thing when you sign up for it. And so even if she were to cheat or something like that, we gonna have a lot of work to do, but it's not a case where we getting divorced. We together. We in this. You got a problem, that means I got a problem. I think David said it when we were on the podcast, and he was like, well, he said this, and I was like, I can't necessarily agree until he started to explain more of it. And he was like, well, some of the things you got to ask if she cheats is, what exactly was your part in her cheating? Or if he cheats is, what exactly was your part in him cheating? And it's not necessarily to say that all the time you're going to have something to blame, because some people might just have something, they might just decide this is what they want to do. But the majority of the time when there's infidelity in a relationship is because there was something that was missing from the relationship.
Or it's unspoken expectations. That good old premarital counseling will help you a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I have heard some testimonies from it, and I think also my Uncle David, Uncle Red, he said that for him and his wife it was mandatory to do it. And I think within that, counseling is when you relay everything on the table, and that also goes with expectations that you may have, whether financial, roles within the house, sex expectations, everything, because that will better prepare you to understand who you about to make covenant with, So yeah, and also I also believe that a part of the infidelity is, now sometimes, yes, it was the victim. I would say it's not their fault, because again, you can't control the other person, and the other person may just want to do what they want to do, and no type of blame on the person. But I also believe that's a lack of communication too, because it led to get to a point to where, you're not communicating effectively. It's not just even talking, effective communication and comprehension, that something was missing. And I think that goes with the expectations, and person decided, well, I'm not getting what I'm getting, or whatever the case may be. You didn't share that with your spouse. And it's like, well, I'm going to go venture and try to find it somewhere else, Mm-hmm. So, and that's within, obviously, reason, of course. Amen. But yeah, so.
No, most definitely. I don't know how we got on this subject, but you know what? We rolling. we clearly going at this right now. Man.
Yeah, but it's oh my goodness, it's very important. Just as I said earlier, just hearing testimonies from men. I haven't really heard any testimonies from women per se, but I've heard a lot of testimonies from men and stories about them going through addiction, pornography addiction and whatnot. I even heard a story about a guy who was in the industry, and he wound up becoming a believer, and just him telling his story, his journey, and how he really had to deal with shame, feeling dirty, for not just watching it, being in it, having your coworkers, and whatnot, and then also knowing that family and friends know what you do. And some people have seen what you do. It's on the internet. It's forever, but now you're a believer in Christ. and you got to live with the fact that, well, you did what you did. So there's some consequences that come. And that's another thing. Like with this particular thing, like you wind up doing certain things and those consequences haunt you for the rest of your life. It may not necessarily be pregnancy per se, but that is definitely one. But there are some consequences that come from indulging in certain things for a very long time. Not even a long time, but just indulging in it, and they can haunt you for the rest of your life. You know, but I will say I'm elated to hear that there are people who are willing to do the work, that they know they have a problem. There's some people who they know and they're not honest with themselves, but there are some people in whom, they give the testimony that it clicked for them one day. They were like, yeah, nah, I gotta get this fixed. I gotta get this handled. Like this ain't it. I remember one guy, he said what clicked for him was the fact that he got caught. His mother caught him. His mother caught him watching, and he was like, nah, this down bad. I can't do this no more. And so just to get to a point where there are people who do know, but as I said earlier, trying to figure out the root as to why they indulge in pornography and why they have the addiction, is important. And then obviously you do the counseling, you do the work that you need to do. I heard somebody say, there's people using a metaphor. You break your ankle or your leg and you go through physical therapy. There are some people who would rather deal with the limp and settle with the limp than actually doing the work through the rehabilitation to walk normally again. So there's some people who rather just deal with the addiction and be like, well, it is what it is, instead of doing the work that they need to do to combat it, fight the flesh, fast, pray, take certain things away, the things in which are triggering you, things in which you can't do by yourself. You know good and well, you start listening to this particular song. Good and well if you go on this particular app that you're going to be seeing things. When you go to this particular place or hang out with this particular person. Hello? That there's some things that's going to trigger you. Like you got to do the work. If you're serious about it, you're going to do the work. And just hearing the testimonies, everybody is happy that they did it. It was tough. It was work, but they came out of it so much better to where now they can say, I'm following Christ, that, they're living for God, that, they still have urges and whatnot, but it's better handled because they're really trying to walk in the spirit. They have the accountability that they have, the accountability partners. That's another thing we need to talk about with, one of the things that you can do if you find yourself struggling, making sure you have accountability. Like listen, if you got to have a group chat, if you got to have somebody who you trust, a pastor, a counselor, a leadership, a friend, whoever can help you, that leads properly, obviously, and who you trust to hold you accountable, to be there. That support system is very important because you can't do it alone, to really help them out with it. But everyone comes out, just, fighting day to day, and their quality of life is tremendously blessed. And again, every aspect of their life gets better. Their relationships get better. Some of them actually get married. They have kids, and they're walking and trying to fight it, and because they don't want it to affect the marriage or them raising their kids and stuff. So, but yeah, it's definitely a hot topic. Glad we spoke on it. But these are some of those things that just need to be discussed because there are people in whom are quiet about it, who are hiding it, who they're fighting a silent battle, and they're drowning in it, but to know that there is hope in Christ, that you are not alone. There are hundreds, thousands, millions of people who are going through this, and I'm speaking as a believer, who are struggling with this, but understanding that Christ loves you, that he died on the cross for you for that very sin, that the lust struggle and infidelity, and infidelity and anything like that goes underneath lust, that he handled it on the cross. And it's just our job to accept what he did and to, walk in the spirit and, receive that and, do what we got to do. So
I'm so glad you said that because, like, even like you said, with stuff with apps, you know, I had to delete Instagram off my phone for that reason.
Listen, you gotta do what you gotta do. You gotta do what you
I
gotta
deleted that back in March before I even went on the cruise because I realized, first off, I said, yo, this is, I told them it was just taking too much time off of my hands. Like, I'd go down like rabbit holes and be on Instagram for hours just scrolling.
do. Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, so that makes it an idol. But secondly, I was like, the only thing that's on Instagram is comedy reels, which I love,
Mm-hmm.
and half naked women. And I found that I was on the latter more than the former.
Mm.
And so I had to remove that. And as far as accountability goes, like, it's so true. Like, you're not, like, I hate to say it this way, but you're not going to get through this alone.
Mm.
When it comes to this particular thing, this is something you got to have somebody else in your corner for. Somebody else praying for you. Somebody else, you know, calling to check up on you. Somebody else now that they've been praying for you, the Holy Spirit will alert them when they need to make a phone call to check on you.
Mm.
Like, I made sure that me and Rodney are like that with each other. I also made sure that me and your Uncle Red like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I realized that when it came down to it, I needed somebody that was going to be in the spirit that was going to call me the way I called Rodney about it.
Yeah.
Like, the same way that Rodney has to deal with me a lot of the time when, like, the Holy Spirit presses my heart, call Rodney, start praying about this, this, and this. Is the same way your uncle do me.
Mm-hmm.
To the point where it's almost kind of infuriating because I feel like, man, there ain't nothing that you don't see, is there?
All up in my business.
All up in my business.
But it is to save you. It's to keep you.
Exactly. It is the same. So I have one other question, right?
Mm.
Do you feel like, and we talked about all this mess in marriage and everything, right?
Mm.
Do you feel like watching pornography is a form of cheating?
Good question. Me personally, yes. Because I know what it can turn into. I know that I've heard, you know, there are couples that use it to enhance their marriage bed. But I don't think but I don't think that's a good teacher because we just said it. It's not real. It's some crazy debauchery that be on it, you know, and it's just like it's not healthy, you know. So I don't think, you know, it's the best thing to be watching, you know, at all. But the fact that you're watching it and you're seeing other women in a form in which you shouldn't be, if you can help it, hello, because I mean, if we live in our day to day, you drive in and you see a billboard with a woman in a bikini, you can't help that, you know. But you can help that you clicked and typed and scrolled and clicked and typed and scrolled, you know.
Yeah.
But I think it's disrespectful to the person whom you committed to, and the aspect of being faithful and whatnot. Like, we know what it can do, you know. So you start, as I said, when I read those statistics earlier. Like, them statistics show that it is damaging to a marriage to be watching it, and just what it does. It said the women in whom have husbands who are addicts can be diagnosed of having PTSD. I don't know exactly how that go, but you know, that's crazy to get to that type of thing. So, that I know how serious it is and what it can turn into. And again, as I said, I feel like it's disrespectful, you know, to be kind of, I feel like it's going behind the person back, because that obviously, mostly cheating, you ain't gonna let the person know. But to be doing, like, watching it and whatnot, you know, yeah, no. It's a no for me, dog. It's a no for me.
So I tend to agree with you on this. So I know a lot of people that are on both sides of this fence, right? Mm-hmm. And I got a guy I know who, you know, just had a kid and got married and everything. And he said the first thing his girl said, because she's traditional, she's African, family's from France and everything. And she told him, she was like, no, I don't ever want to catch you watching that. If you feel like you horny, you tell me.
Hello, you're married.
You got this, you tell me.
Come on, that's what I'm here for.
Right. So
okay.
My thing is, I tend to agree with that line of thinking, because at the end of the day, We are for each other. We are one.
Right.
You know, it tells you not to withhold yourself from each other in the
You are
word
mine
lest you
and I am
tempt
yours.
the other for infidelity.
Mm-hmm.
And I do feel like it's cheating because you are literally pleasing yourself off of somebody else that's not me. So you're literally looking at that guy and imagining sleeping with him in your head. And if I do it, I'm literally looking at that girl and imagining I'm with her. And like you said, I have to make the effort to go in there and type in big, busty, beautiful biker babes. Look at the alliteration.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
But you have to, like, that's an effort that you're putting out. It's not like it just flashed across the scene.
Like I said, the billboard. Right.
Yeah, it's not a sex scene in a movie. You made the effort to go out of your way and do this to please yourself.
Pull up
instead
the
of going to your
computer.
party,
Click on Google Chrome. Click on Safari. Click on Google. Click
incognito.
on the search bar. Oh, sorry. Let me put that. Make sure you put on the incognito. And then you go into the search bar, type in what you're typing, and then type some more, and click and scroll until you find what you're looking for. You know, like, come on now. That's a lot. That's a lot of effort and a lot of intentionality in that. There's something that you said. Oh, I want to ask you a question. So I've heard that, you shouldn't think it's, anything to do with you to feel like, oh, you're not good enough. Oh, why? Start questioning yourself. Oh, why they got to watch that? Am I not good enough? All this stuff. What do you say to that?
Okay, so here's what I say to that, right? So there are instances where you can drive your partner into doing that. For example, I know a lot of times from what I hear from dudes that when they do get married down the line, their wife doesn't want to have sex anymore, and she starts holding out. Or what she starts doing is kind of like guilting him when she does do it by behaving like it's a chore and that she doesn't want to do it, so he don't want to ask her. And so he got to go figure it out on his own. At that point, it is a you problem because you are now withholding what you're supposed to be giving freely to him because your body is not your own. And that's on both of your accounts. Your body is not your own. So when you start withholding from them and everything, this is kind of like what Rhett was coming up with when he said, like, you got to look at yourself and see what you contributed towards that. Like, if you're sitting here going, I don't want to give him none. I don't feel like it. I'm too tired. I'm not giving him none. And you ain't done nothing for like a couple weeks straight. And you think he's just about to keep sitting around here built up wanting his wife and can't have her? Like, yeah, don't get me wrong. It's wrong on his part.
Right.
But
doesn't justify the behavior.
But you definitely pushed him down that path. And even when it comes to even infidelity, you can push somebody down that path. They can be as strong as they want. But if y'all not having sex because you want to hold out or for whatever reason, and let's say y'all go months at a time without doing it, and now y'all fighting and arguing over it because it's causing a point of tension in y'all marriage. So now y'all having tension in the marriage and fights, and you're not having sex, and it's been months, and he got this young secretary intern at the job
that's giving him attention
with the red dress with the slit up the thigh.
Not the dress with the slit.
And it starts tempting him.
My Lord.
It's setting him up to fall. Like, you got to cover your spouse. And that doesn't just talk about in prayer.
Right.
And it's something else. Oh, man, see, look, just quoting Red all day. Red talk about this. And he said whenever him and Keisha have any little bit of spat or something like that, right? He says like clockwork. He said, watch for the woman in the blue dress. For him as a woman in a blue dress, right? Uh-huh. And he said, just watch out. It always comes to tempt. And he just laughs about it. And he'll call Keisha and talk to her about it. And it's one of those things like, look, the world, it's how things work. The world's going to do that. The enemy's going to do that. And to be fair, people, for some reason, like married people. It's not just women, it's dudes too.
Yeah.
I've heard dudes justify saying, well, shoot, if I'm messing with a married woman, I ain't got to pay nothing for her. She just want to get some sex.
Yikes.
She got a whole husband to do everything else. I'm just giving her what he can't give her.
Right. or to see or the other thing I've heard more from the women's aspect to try to get with a married man is the fact that he's wanted.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so the fact that somebody wanted him, the fact that he had like he's wanted, that's quote unquote attractive, whatever. But yeah, it's crazy out here. It's crazy.
Yeah, so I think you can do that, but at the same time, I don't think you should just jump to saying, "Yo, everything's my fault." Because when it comes to stuff like, let's say, like the pornography or lust problems, sometimes that's just that person. That's the problem with that person, and it's something y'all both are gonna have to work through now. But it's not. That's not always a thing where you had a part in causing that. That's a self-discipline problem with that person,
Right.
which caused them to become overcome by their flesh.
Right. I would tell anybody who found themselves in that situation, whatever. Like again, as you said, to try to figure out, well, why is it? What did you do to kind of help with that? But sometimes you ain't do nothing. You did everything right, and it's the person. So to not, if you can clear that, to really keep in mind that it's not you, it's them. It sounds cliche, but it's not you, it's them. And don't take that blame or that burden on yourself and start, oh my goodness, start second guessing yourself. No, you good. It's them. Keep them in prayer.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, man.
This was great. We just went for an hour and a half, Christina.
Wow, look at these numbers.
I know. Well, we want to thank everybody who stuck around for the full 90 minutes of this this podcast.
Yes, we appreciate you. We appreciate you.
We definitely
it's one of those
appreciate you.
topics, so.
Yeah, it was a lot to say. And to be honest, this is a conversation that probably could be going on a whole lot longer. I mean, look, it went for 2 podcasts.
Yeah.
For a combined total, probably like 2 hours and 45 minutes, something like that. Because we didn't stop at an hour in the last one and went over that. I think it was like 75 minutes. So, we appreciate y'all for sticking around. Again, like, comment, subscribe. Follow us on all of our social medias. Follow the beautiful, majestic, anointed Miss Rennie Mocha at Renaissance C _7 on Instagram.
Mm-hmm. See.
And follow the Godman podcast on all of your social media outlets, YouTube as well. And again, Godman podcast at gmail.com. You can hit us up. Tell us if there's something specific you'd like us to talk about. If you need someone to pray for you, we have intercessors on the ready. If you need some pastoral advice, we have a pastor on call for you.
Ooh.
Not talking about myself, guys.
No.
So yeah, we thank you. We thank you. And this has been us. This is Mike.
This is Rennie.
And we will talk to you later. Okay? Bye.
Later.
Okay, bye.